Theory Underground is coming to Europe for an American Idiots EU book tour. To learn more, visit theoryunderground.com/EU Tour 2024. Throughout the tour, there will be stops in Paris on April 27th, Brussels on April 30th and May 2nd, Berlin on May 10th, Vienna on May 14th, Linz on May 15th, Krakow on May 18th, Glasgow on May 22nd, London on May 24th, and finally, Oxford on May 25th. To learn more, visit theoryunderground.com/EU-tour-2024. The next Philosophy Portal course focuses on Hegel's philosophy of right, a text which represents Hegel's most mature political notion of rights. The course starts May 18th, 2024. To find out more, visit philosophyportal.online. Welcome to another philosophical conversation. My name is Cadell Last, and I'm here with the Theory Underground crew, David McKerracher, Nance, and Anne Snellgrove. I should say Anne Snellgrove McKerracher. And we're here today to announce the European tour that Theory Underground is going to be leading in May, starting at the end of April and throughout the entire month of May. There will be events in Paris, Brussels, Berlin, Vienna, Linz, Krakow, Glasgow, London, and Oxford. So it's going to be a crazy tour. Just going to throw it over you to Dave, just to sort of see where you are with this tour and you know how we should start conversations opening up about what this tour is about and what you hope for it.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. It's great to be back. It's been a minute since we've had a nice visit on your channel. All of us. Well, I don't think. I was going to say all of us together, but I don't know that we've all four done something like this. And so it's really cool. Like, we've all talked with you, Nance with me and you, Anne with me and you. But now that we're all together here, it's cool. We're only missing Mikey pretty much. We'll have to do that conversation soon. But today we're coming out of what I just discovered is a new record in terms of these epic live stream marathons that we're doing. Yesterday was a 17-hour live stream marathon to kick off the American Idiots tour. And so, I mean, you know, we might be heading to Europe tomorrow, or sorry, I mean, like a few days after tomorrow, I guess. In a couple days, we're heading to Europe. But it feels like the tour has already begun because of yesterday. And there's a new word in the theory scene, and I like Cadell, you were just talking about all these meme-worthy kind of words that are coming out of like these generative discourses, right? Well, Mikey came up with a new term, and it's for the kind of conversation that we were trying to go for yesterday, which I said it was the invention of a new genre. It's called the contradiction conversation, which cannot be intelligible unless you're coming from a sort of dialectical background, right? You have to kind of understand contradiction, negativity, lack, Hegel, Marx, Zizek, Lacan, right? Like that's the sort of theoretical basis for it. Of course, I bring in Karl Jaspers and the idea of the university and just working through disagreements, not for the sake of a side winning, but for the sake of the learner, the worker with earbuds winning, right? It's done for in the interests of the person who is sorting through things and thinking for his or herself. And so the contradiction conversations, or converdictions, is what Mikey coined there. And yeah, so we just had a whole day of those, culminating in Todd McGowan and Chris Catrone, the discussion of the century, I mean, really, it was probably one of the best conversations I've ever seen. And so I'll let everybody else, talk about what might have been their favorite part of the tour launch yesterday. But yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much all I'm thinking about is like, wow, I can't believe that was 17 hours. This morning I just had my little breakfast of champions. I went and got my chicken fried steak at the local cafe. It's like the thing I have to do after something huge. But now I'm ready to relax. And so this is kind of like my decompress session with you, Cadell. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, this is the metaphorical cigarette after.
Yeah.
You can get out your cigarette if you like. Nance, go. We'll go to you and welcome to the channel, Nance. This is your first time on, so great to have you.
This is my first time. Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, yesterday was, I think it was stellar. I got a little emotionally invested, which I don't like to do for multiple reasons. It's crass, it's silly, it kind of defeats the purpose of having conversations in the first place and all this stuff. But I was invested because I am invested in kind of pushing not just conversations forward, but also the medium that we're all like kind of experimenting with. And I really do believe we can have these super long form disagreements. People talk about the long form podcast, and that's like 4 hours long. No, I want to have conversations over the stretch of years, through essays and books and responses and shit like that. And I think we did, for the most part, accomplish that. I think every conversation was an opening for this kind of long, drawn out discourse. And that's fucking cool. But yeah, it's definitely exhausting. And trying to do all that while preparing to go to Europe, to go to this continent that's so rich with like symbolic importance. And I do feel like kind of like a destitute American idiot. And I'm going to go stink up the place. I'm going to track mud all over the fancy, places. And it's fucking cool. I'm excited.
Fantastic. Well, it's gonna be great to have you guys here. And I know that Dave, Nance, you guys are gonna be at the beginning of the tour, but Anne, you're gonna be joining towards the latter half of the tour. So how are you feeling? How are you preparing for the tour, and what are you looking forward to the most?
Yeah. I'm kind of the official like Three Underground travel agent, which has actually been kind of fun because I'm very much like just the logistics and the planning is very much my thing. I'm pretty good at it, I would say. And so that's been my like biggest contribution while Dave and Nance are actually the ones getting ready to go off. I've been like, okay, here's your hostel for this place. Here's your when you're leaving to go to this place. So I have a little itinerary like almost finished for the two of them. Um, and so yeah, I'll be flying into Katowice, not Katowice, Krakow, Poland, like 2 days after I finish doing a musical here in Boise, which is partly why I'm coming late because I'm in production of Cinderella. Um, and so that'll be fun because I'll actually get like a day to myself to kind of breathe and travel on my own a little bit, and then we'll join in. And I'm excited to meet our connection in Poland, then off to the UK, which will be fun to return to London and meet like Nina and Helen. And I loved Helen's talk yesterday in the live stream with Dave. Like yesterday morning was when all the ladies were on. So I was on with Dave and Nance, and then we had Helen Rollins and then Michelle Gardner from OG Rose. And I was like, wow, there's some cool, like very well spoken, but also like very feminine presenting women in the theory milieu, which I think needs more representation. And I like that Dave asked the question to Michelle. He basically was like, so you're a woman in the theory space. Tell us about that. And her advice was just like, yeah, you shouldn't be intimidated by men. Like the men in this space aren't trying to intimidate you. Like you can do it, kind of. You can take up the space. And so I really admire both of them and their talks. And I do admire Nina and all the work that she does, and just that she is like strong in her positions. And so I'm really looking forward to that event. I'm obviously looking forward to like getting to meet you in real life in London. That will be super exciting. Um, and I've been like very, very busy with end of semester stuff. But I have a little break coming up, and so I'll actually get to really, I think, like fully realize, oh, this tour is coming up and get to prepare a little bit more. And so I'm stoked. I'm really excited. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to meet all of you in person as well. I think it's a super important dimension of all of this theorizing and online activity we're doing. It's something that I've tried to remain committed to. I see it as part of the necessity of introducing, making the physical dimension a necessity is part of introducing a necessary friction to the online process, which can easily get lost in sort of specular immediacy. Where basically, of course, when you just have your relationships online, you can have an endless number of possible relationships opening up. But I think with the physical, by making the necessity of the physical relationality as not primary, but as an important component of the process, you slow things down and you become more embodied, and you open up the conditions of possibility for a different type of community and a different type of community mind. And like I've said before, that's something that I've always appreciated in Theory Underground's work. It's something that I've always saw as an essential part of Theory Underground. And you guys collectively do such a good job with the ground game. So it's something I admire. It's something that inspires me. And that's one of the joys of collaborating with people like yourselves, is that it is constantly a motivation and an inspiration for my own work and for what I see as the possibility of the theory space in general. So let's talk about the theory space in general and the possibility of having these contradiction conversations, or the awkward word, the converdictions. Maybe we could start with we're gonna start the tour. I'm gonna be there at the start of the tour and at the end of the tour with you guys. At the start of the tour, we'll be in Paris and Brussels, and I know from that organizing process, the converdictions we're going to be having kind of open up at the intersection between time energy and the commons, time energy and the logic of contradiction itself, as kind of an orienting principle. And of course, as that framing, we want to emphasize that this book tour is the time energy book tour and also the underground theory book tour. So that will run throughout the entire tour itself. So yeah, Dave, what are your hopes for this live experimentation with contradiction conversations? What are you hoping to get out of this?
Yeah. Well, I think that the to be super technical with converdiction is just to say that these conversations are to be a converdiction, it has to have two people. I don't know if there has to be a third person kind of refereeing it, maybe, but like I think maybe two people can do it. Because like I did one with Eamon of the Solitariat. It was just the two of us, you know. I mean, Nance was there to referee, but he never said a word until the very end. And so, you know, we were both, you know, that everyone gave each other enough time to say, you know, his piece throughout all four of the contradictions yesterday. But the technical idea is that a contradiction naturally arises through the process of organizing and talking about theory in the scene, right? The theory scene has antagonisms and oppositions. The question is are any of those real contradictions? And if so, let's allow them to surface. And so, of course, the one that really takes the cake, I think, is the Chris Catrone saying that he cares about Lacan about as much as he does for Proud Boys sitting around talking about how doing semen retention. You know, he thinks that it's all part of the same thing, which is just this kind of navel gazing. It's not the real deal. It's not the good stuff. And you know, I was like, wow, you know, I'm pretty sure Lacan's more important than that. And in fact, he's pretty important for your project. And so we brought on Mikey and McGowan, among others, the following day. This was 2 years ago. And both were willing to speak to each other when I asked them that week, 2 years ago. But then I never arranged the debate because I didn't want my project to seem like a debate channel. As I was shifting from Theory Plebe to Theory Underground, I waited 2 years to make that conversation happen just because I wanted to make sure people got the freaking memo about what it is at Theory Underground. It's an education first kind of platform. And of course, we popularized the idea of Zizek versus Nick Land as a debate. And we've been instigating that for the last several months. But that was before we came up with the idea of contradiction conversations. And now that we have that idea, it's like, yeah, no, we're not looking for the Nick Land Zizek debate. We're looking for the contradiction between the two of them, which is to just say, the technical term means allowing two people who basically embody the contradiction in the scene to articulate their position vis-a-vis the other. It's not about beating the other. It's just about being like, well, this is my position. And then the other person goes, well, this is my position. What about that? What about that? What about that? Well, what about this? What about this? And it's just about clarifying yourself in the presence of the other, allowing the other to witness, because otherwise it's like, oh yeah, well, those Delusians, they think this and that. Okay, well, could we get one in the room? Is there any that you respect? Is there any that you respect enough to like allow them to be present while you talk about them and while you distinguish yourself from them? Most of the conversations, with that said, are not going to be contradictions in a strict sense on this tour, though I think contradiction is a big theme in the events we're doing in Paris and Brussels, especially. But I think also like the general theme of anti-intellectualism, that we are obviously American Idiots sort of signifies this idea of anti-intellectualism in the United States. It's the United States' major export, right? Like this is what we are spreading throughout the world because, you know, workaholicism, hustle and grind culture, the job-centric society, the stultification of time energy in its reduction to labor power. All of that fosters the conditions for functional illiteracy. And that's what we want to combat in ourselves. That's what we want to combat in ourselves. And part of the issue is that functional illiteracy doesn't just mean people can't read. They don't really know how to read. They can read, but it's deceptive because they really don't know how, right? It's not just that. It's also that people don't know how to think because reading, writing, thinking, having the time energy to do so, these are all part and parcel to this bigger thing. And having conversations with other people who disagree with you is part of that. Being able to see other people who've lived and breathed and embodied these other positions, have conversations together, is a precondition of being able to think for oneself, because I am these ideas. I am these two wolves. I am split between McGowan and Catrone. I am split between Samuel Longcar and Justin Murphy. I am split between myself and Eamon. These splits are not like, oh, it's just me as a solitary ego. No, it's like these contradictions constitute my subjectivity. If I can't think them through to the end, if I can't see what they would actually, because here's the thing, I can't in my mind hold that conversation between those two parts of myself that are McGowan and Catrone better than they can. And if I try, it doesn't go as well. They did so much better than my imagination of that conversation. What would you guys want to add to that?
I do think on the
go ahead, Nance. Go ahead.
I just to quickly add, yeah, with the Catrone and McGowan conversation, like it opened up a conversation after the fact with you, Dave, and Mikey and myself, where we're talking about subjectivity and the split and language and versus consciousness and all this like that. I don't know if we would have had that conversation right after were it not for that conversation. I don't know if I would have been able to articulate some of the questions and then following up where I want to go to Lumen and try to bring Lumen to Lacan. And I'm thinking via Baudrillard, and Mikey's like, well, try Levi Strauss. Like there's already so much more coming out of that conversation because it was real, not imaginal. So they really are generative. They really are tools for helping us think and write towards understanding and do this type of deconstruction that further enriches the scene and all of our understanding. It's great.
Yeah, and if you look to, the first class that we did at Theory Underground, the idea of the university, and a part of Jasper's conception of the university is this ability to have discourse and even disagreements between departments, between fields, between, thinkers and individuals, truth seekers. And, Theory Underground somewhat functioning as a counter to the current existing, American neoliberal university. Kind of, we're trying to embody this ideal of the university outside of the institution. And just in my own experience this semester, but it's something you can look at all the research about higher education and see what's going on. But it's like, yeah, there is not contradiction especially in the fields that need it the most. It's like the scientific community is all about these contradictions and pointing out the flaws and clarifying positions. It's like that's what their conferences are all about. But as soon as you get to something like philosophy or sociology, where there's more contentious topics, the contradictions and the discourse and the disagreement, from what I've seen and like my personal experience, just isn't happening. And I think it's a shame, because I think everyone's research would be stronger. I think everyone would be more committed to this idea of seeking truth. And so I really admire that Dave was like, we need to just make this happen right here. And like, it's kind of a model, it's an example for how you can, be cordial and have a conversation with someone who doesn't see eye to eye with you on a certain topic. But it makes each other stronger, and you can see where there is some truth. So it's not just this constant like demonization of the other side, or, oh, this other side will never understand me, or, oh, this side is bad. Oh, well, maybe if you let them say their position, you'll at least understand them. And that's not only part of the process of learning and truth seeking, but it's part of like humanizing the other, seeing the other's face, if you look at it in like Levinas-ian term. And that needs to
100%.
happen. That needs to happen.
That's amazing. And I really want to emphasize that I love this move that you're making at Theory Underground from debate style to contradiction style. I think that is sort of the sweet spot that I think is best for the platform remaining education first, like you're emphasizing, and keeping sort of true to the spirit of philosophy. I think that's fantastic, and it would be great to. And I think that I also want to emphasize something really important. I think that Anne was talking about in regards to science is about highlighting these contradictions. But then why, when it gets to philosophy and sociology, does that stop happening? And I think that's because the contradiction has to become the self-contradiction. And so with science, it's easier to have the contradiction external to oneself. Whereas when you get into philosophy and sociology, the contradiction has to become internal to oneself. And that means you have to start framing the situation in the way that you were framing it, Dave, which is that these contradictions live inside me. And I can't think through the end result of these contradictions unless I can build the space where the actual human beings who are embodying these different positions are as it were, open to engaging this contradiction in a radical way. There is something radical about that, because it does involve, but it's also something deeply historical and spiritual about it, because you're recognizing that your own position is a part of the ongoing philosophical process itself. History is not over, right? Like, these positions are never final and settled. Like, we are the historical philosophical process. And I think that it's very easy to forget that when you're in it. But, and I think that tends to happen. I've seen in university settings where, like, I have a lot of like really smart friends who were in like philosophy and anthropology departments at, say, the University of Toronto. but they see the philosophical conversation as like taking place in the past, like between Deleuze and Foucault, and they don't see themselves as part of that philosophical process. Like it's almost like they wouldn't give themselves the dignity of being a part of that philosophical process. Like but in any case, I do think that this is sort of what we're trying to bring to the surface, and um, making philosophy more real in that sense. So even though the tour won't necessarily be highlighting the contradiction, I'm glad we've had a chance to bring out the importance of this innovation in the context of the development of your work at Theory Underground. Let's say what are you looking forward to specifically in relationship to the tour? What can people expect? Where can people connect with you if they want to become a part of the tour? And let's maybe go in that direction. Oh, you're muted there, or the sound's not
Thank
working
you,
for some
thank you.
reason.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, yeah. I was, I'm trying to get in the habit of muting myself when I'm not talking from the microphone, but then I keep forgetting. So there are people wondering how to get involved, how to show up, and or wondering why they might want to. And to the people who are wondering why they might want to, or why would we want to? That is another thing. We have had people like, so why do you want to do this again? And I'll let Nance speak on this a little bit, but we both have like hardcore, like underground roots. Like as far as like, I'm not saying that we're so underground or we're so hardcore, but I'm saying like our roots are in the sense that that had a big impact on us growing up, like our music, and taking inspiration from the idea of people who would go on tour, um, and they would go they'd go coast to coast, and then they'd go like 12 hours out of their way to do a garage show in a town in the middle of nowhere for, three people who wrote them a letter and said, hey, you got to come to our town. And then they would play like three shows there over the course of the next few days and hang out, and they'd all get drunk and be throwing stuff and going crazy and having great conversations. And that was the 1970s. And that was before the, like sort of punk music thing became a bit more industrialized. And the thing about music today, and I look, I don't like punk music so much. I take inspiration from it, but it's also like, it's just not my cup of tea personally. I just take insane amounts of inspiration from that DIY ethos and from that the ethic of like, hey, you know what? You don't have to be really, really good at singing. You don't have to like you don't have to be the number one singer in the world to be in a band. You don't have to be able to play more than a certain amount of chords. Can you go really fast? Can you put a lot of passion into it? Then let's go. And so like I respect the hell out of that. And I think that it matters even more when it comes to theory, because it's like, let's set the bar low at the point of entry, and then let's set it real high later on, right? Set it real low at the point of entry and let everybody know, hey, we're all a bunch of idiots, but we're trying to get somewhere else. And I guess that's part of my issue with punk. A lot of the times it has a problem with going higher. It kind of wants to stay leveled. But the cool part about that, everybody starting off like at this lower tier, like approach, like, hey, anybody can do it, was that in that scene, everybody had a band. Everybody had a band. It wasn't a bunch of scene kids. It was like everybody's on a project. And that's kind of how we see the theory scene today. Well, the theory scene today is kind of the opposite. There are influencers in the attention economy, and then there are masses of consumers. And of course, it's pretty niche, so we don't have masses. But a couple 100,000 people on the internet might tune into this or that philosophy channel from time to time. I don't know how many come to like these more in-depth sides of the scene where there's actual institutions doing coursework like Philosophy Portal or Theory Underground. There's not nearly as many as are watching, say, Jonas Cheka's channel, or Plastic Pills or something like that, because it's like not everyone's committing to reading the books for themselves. But that's kind of what we're doing as like little institutions, our goal is to say, yeah, but the scene can go from being most people being scene kids to being most people having real projects and actually like doing the thing themselves. And instead of influencers, we want to be instructors ultimately. You know, we want to actually help set up these sort of learning models for people and have that kind of structure. So anyway, um, yeah, the whole thing about the 70s, the whole thing about hardcore and punk and what and that ethos, for us, it's just about getting to know people and getting out there and getting the vibe and sort of vibe checking. And like we think it's important because the internet flattens everything and makes everybody feel instantaneously available. And I want you, Cadell, to talk a little bit about uh, the attention economy versus tension and friction. Tension and friction. I think that that was like really insightful from you the other day. And I think it'll be a nice segue for Anne to talk about critical media theory. But first, Nance, is there anything you want to say about the hardcore ethos?
I mean, no, I think you pretty much said it all. Like, it's rather than sitting back and being a consumer and just resigning yourself to being nothing but a producer consumer, like it was about getting out there and doing something real. And maybe for a while it was real, and then it got captured, just like everything else. Um, but yeah, it's just do it yourself. Don't sit back. Don't be a passive spectator. Um, Go do something. Go actually do something. And this is, for whatever reason, what we latched onto. And this is, at least as far as I could tell, the way to do it. You have to actually get out and do it. Like, I was no longer satisfied sitting back, watching BreadTube, trying to read books. Like when I started with Theory Underground, I told Dave I've never read a book because I had never actually gone through and rigorously read a book. I've read a shitload of books, but we don't have access to thought and study and theory the way they did back when they wrote all these big books that we read. So yeah.
Yeah, I can say a little bit more maybe that connects attention economy dynamics to what we're doing, and then however you want to take that, you can take it however you want. Um, Funny enough, I was watching a YouTube channel from a left tube producer, and he was making a video. It was a very meta video, which was why I was watching it, which was about the left tube pipeline. And he had this big representation of his model of the left tube pipeline. And basically, the left tube pipeline goes from influencers down the pipeline to teachers, how he was representing it. And so, you might say, oh, that's pretty good. But the problem with the representation is that he was going from influencers to teachers, but everything was exclusively online. And there was no behind the scenes to the teachers. There was no actual educational infrastructure. It was just a YouTube teaching platform, right? Which is basically where I started doing like the Zizek Less Than Nothing lectures. It was just, here's some online lectures, right? But there was no behind the lectures. There was no school set up. There was no program set up. And so now that I'm thinking about it a little more, what I'm thinking about is like if I was to kind of memify his pipeline that he was presenting on, I would create, like those memes where you have like the iceberg that goes down into like the super dark areas. Like you have the surface of have you ever seen those memes? Like you have the surface content and then you go deep below the iceberg and then like you have the super obscure stuff like in the darkness. Like that's kind of where we are right now. Like we're in the super dark, obscure space. No one even really knows it exists yet, but I think it's actually the future. I think it's actually the future is because all this stuff from influencers to teachers, it has to include an actual infrastructure behind the online presence. And then it also has to include a physical dimension, or else it just remains online. It remains superficial in that sense. And I think that in some sense, like this is, what's opening up here is the distinction between virtual immediacy and conceptual mediation, in the sense that in order to actually mediate that darkness, You need the logic of negation, and it needs to be enacted on the level of your own self-contradiction. And if you're not if you're not able to do it on that level, and that requires a certain, like, that's crucial, is like there's no amount of education, there's no amount of books you can read that will allow you to be able to embody that subjective position, because it's a subjective position. Like the thing that unifies us here isn't like we've read the same amount of books or we've done the same amount. There's a certain subjective position that we inhabit, and that unifies us, right? And that gives us sort of a common orientation. I actually think, and this is inspired by, I gave a lecture yesterday at the Free University of Brussels on dialectics, and I actually worked through in that lecture that I think all of this stuff we're talking about does actually lead to literally a different way of living and a different way of being. And I would juxtapose this different way of living and different way of being in relationship to the only way that most humans have ever been able to live and inhabit a world, which is through a worldview and through a type of religious metaphysics, whether explicitly religious or not explicitly religious, but a type of worldview, a type of metaphysics which gives home, which gives belonging, you could say. And I think this different type of being, this different type of way of living, is turning the contradiction into your home in some sense. Like, this is, I am split. Like, this split is me. And I am going to always be working through this split. And I have a faith. I think there's a faith dimension to it. The faith is that by working through this contradiction, it will come to a positive result. I don't know what the positive result will be. I can't know it in advance because in the present moment, I'm working with the contradiction as such. So I don't know what will come out of it. But I think that, but the cool thing is when you start to live like this, I think it starts to require less faith in a sense, because you do start to see the positive results accumulating, right? Like, like whatever, living into the relationship I have with you guys, for example, is like, I didn't know in advance that it would lead to being able to collaborate on a European tour. But here we are, and that's cool. And that's the result of all this work, which I could not have known in advance. So it's like, it's a different way of being, different way of living. And I think that we're modeling something that the people who are now in the attention economy are going to be coming towards. And here, I would say it's not just going from an attention economy model to more focusing on a relational economy, which I think is important to think about, like, because it's easy to get sort of effectively driven by the social media attention, but we have to become sort of more internally driven by the real relations behind the screen. Like, like I said this to you once, I think you made a clip out of this, Dave, where I said, I would rather have 50 really cool collaborative relationships than 100,000 followers. Like, we have to get into the mindset of that having 50 really cool collaborative generative relationships is the driving force. And not and if the attention economy comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It doesn't. That's not the main thing. But what that requires of us as subjective positionality is we need to be the type of subjects who can relate in tension, in friction, and use that tension and use that friction to make stronger bonds than would have existed if we didn't bother dealing with the tensions and the friction. Because I think that's why people go to the attention economy, is because basically they can interact with a lot of people superficially. That is, they can interact with a lot of people without real tension or without real friction or without the contradiction becoming internal. So I'll leave that there, and however you want to take that, you can take it.
Yeah, I think there's, on the one hand, from a lot of students who care about like education and learning, there's like a dislike of online courses. I know that when I think about just like going to the university, I'm like, I want to stay as far away from like online or Zoom courses as possible. And then on the other hand, you have all these college students who are like, oh yeah, like take as many online courses as I can. And so there's kind of that contradiction going on within the university, or this kind of two types of people who want online versus not. And so when you look at something like Philosophy Portal or Theory Underground, that is highly kind of online based, I just love that, yeah, that the online part is not the goal. The online and the internet is the tool to mediate real relationships that ideally, like the goal is to meet in person, to in the meet space, as we were saying a lot on our last tour. Because there was truly just like nothing better than that. It was so special to get to go meet not only people like Todd McGowan or Chris Catrone, kind of these people who we look up to in their work, but also to get to meet Philip and to meet Mikey. Like for me, it was my first time and Nance's first time meeting Mikey in real life, and to be with someone kind of in their presence, in their space, especially in their hometowns. And so I love the way that it's like Dave has really reclaimed Discord. It's like we think of Discord, for example, and it is just the place for gamers to spend all their time chit-chatting. And Dave's like, no, we're making this like our actual physical space where we can have conversations and that are focused and where you can get your relevant information. And the goal of the Discord is to not be on the Discord very much. And so I love the way that both of you utilize the online space to facilitate real life conversations and in-person meetings and real relationships. And so the tour, because I know that you do kind of in-person conference type things as well, and you have been, I don't know how long you've been doing those.
We've done retreats every year for the last 2 years, and
Yeah.
hope and other types of in-person things, and that's just, and I'll let you go on after this, but
Yeah.
that's the start of the tour in Paris and Brussels. Those have been spaces that I've been cultivating offline, and so it's putting in that groundwork that opens up opportunities like this.
Mm-hmm. And so having that or doing a tour, there's just something about it that's so special, and I think people are really lacking not only real, like if you look at some of the critical media theory texts that we've been reading, some of the popular texts like Sherry Turkle's Reclaiming Conversation, where there is this crisis of not only solitude, being with ourselves, but solicitude within families, within friendships, within relationships. So on the one hand, there's a crisis of that, but there is also, I think, an ongoing crisis of having these like intellectual or maybe they're artistic, but like meaningful community spaces that are based in time energy or activities that require time energy. And so I just love that the tour is kind of filling that need for a certain group of people in the same way that I think like community theater is a way that like kind of a comparison for people who theater is their life, like doing a show and being part of it in that way rather than just consuming content online. um Serves that function of like the space of people who are obsessed or passionate about a thing can come together and do that activity together. And so I don't know, I see the tour, your retreats, or any sort of conference that actually like allows for contradictions and truth seeking, serving that function that I think we as human beings, as people, like historically have had and that we need and that we've kind of lost in the age of not only social media and everything being online, but just in our like work hustle centric culture that doesn't have time energy, that doesn't give us the time and energy to actually do these things and pursue these relationships that are meaningful.
Well said.
I just wanted to add to that, like with this Discord and so I spent the first year of Theory Underground and the couple months before it launched, building the website and trying to maintain it and trying to debug it and working with technical support on all of the various plugins that it took to make it possible. And it was, I was really loud about the fact that it was like the first Theory social network, like app, right? That was kind of the goal, was to be like, no, it's like a Facebook for Theory, except that it's gated by courses. Like that was the whole point. Well, that's gone. That's gone. The fact is that the technology is not there yet. Now, technically, if I had enough money, it would be possible. But I
Yeah.
was doing it all myself, and I was doing it all with all of these plugins, and it just wasn't working the way that it was supposed to. And it took too much time and energy and left me not being able to do as much of the things that I'm ultimately here to do. And so yeah, we're using Discord as like this sort of intermediary platform until we actually can pay our own programmers. And so for right now, it's like, it's just like this compromise. And the issue is like when I think of Discord, I think of people who are part of like 50 different groups on there, 50 different servers. They play games all day. They pop in and out of all these different servers. They're extreme socialites that never actually experience solitude or solicitude. And that's the thing about Sherry Turkle, what Anna was just saying, is that it's the virtuous circle between genuine being with oneself and genuine being with the other or others. And so, solitude with oneself, solicitude with the other. And this virtuous circle breaks down when you're not achieving solitude. And if you're always on your phone, if you're always online, if you're always on call, then you're not able to have that confrontation with yourself. And also when you're with other people, you're not really with those people because you're also split and you're with all of these other people. You're constantly dispersed. And so, that's Sherry Turkle's whole approach, is just how the smartphone causes a breakdown of the virtuous circle. And people who are perpetually on Discord rarely achieve either of the poles of this virtuous circle, and it causes a breakdown. And the breakdown leads to just falling into non-committal curiosity, chit chat, idle talk, and kind of like a vague sort of ironic posturing ambiguity that is so just honestly, it's everywhere, but it's especially strong in left meme spaces. And it's okay, I guess, but it's okay in the same way that like 16-year-olds cracking some cold ones out in the alleyway, after paying a homeless person to buy them, a 24 rack of some Bush Light. Like it's fine. I mean, sure, do it. Like it's just not like that's a thing you're doing. It's something maybe you'll go through. It's not the point though. Like that's not going to be the end of your development. That's actually not, and it's definitely not going to get you anywhere. Like maybe it'll help you in the short term, but it's not going to help you in the long term. And so like the goal is like to be a place where people, and I think Philosophy Portal is exactly the same in this regard, to be a place where people can go, oh, I'm gonna put my big kid pants on and get serious about stuff. And it's like, Discord's not the place that I would think where people do that, right? Instead, it's like a place where everybody's got anime avatars and they don't use their real names. And so we're out here being like, look, if you're not going to use your real profile, like your face in your actual profile picture on our Discord, then you at least have to use your real name. And we just booted some anonymous people off of the server. Like we have people who have taken courses who then came over, and they were cool people, man. I don't care though. Like this is not about being cool. If you're so interested in maintaining your anonymity, then you're responsible for the culture of fear and silencing. Like you're implicated in it. The moment you come in and you're like, oh yeah, no, I want to be a part of this, but I'm not going to talk about, I don't have a name though. And I don't have a real identity. I don't live in the real world. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Then you wouldn't show up to a conference and you wouldn't have my back in a pinch. So there's no possibility of a relationship here. And so it's just like this is really interesting to think about from a critical media theory perspective. Not only is it causing the breakdown of, or is it part of the breakdown of solitude and solicitude, but it's also like, instead of solicitude and solitude, people are just like extreme socialites, but it's like light, like a light beer, going back to that Bush Light. It really is like, it's like you're a social light. You're not really socializing. You're skimming the surface and kind of holding back because you're afraid that there might be stakes. You're afraid that there might be tension. You're afraid that there might be consequences. You're afraid that there might be friction. And your point, Cadell, what I like so much about this is just like the friction of booking a ticket, the friction of telling your boss you need a day off, the friction of realizing that the other is not just on demand, so, at the drop of a hat, always conveniently within a click away, right? Like the other is actually so many miles away. We're coming to a city near you. Are you going to be there?
Here we can quote Hegel, where he says, "The fear of error reveals itself rather as the fear of truth itself." There you go. So, no, but yeah, but it's like, yeah, no, the other introduce the movement from attentionless dynamics and the superficiality of online relationships towards the type of relationality where we're trying to use the digital virtual in a loop with the physical is something where you actually have to confront the other in a radical sense, which I know you've been referencing Levinas with this as like and that dimension of the other and its radical otherness. So yeah, I think it's there are stakes here and but there's also the possibility of real friendship here. And so I think we're also sort of trying to find this space between being sort of, it's the paradox of our age. I think we've talked about it before, Anne and Dave. We talked about this when we were preparing for the critical media theory course. We had a conversation about McLuhan, and I think we were talking about how, the paradox of our age is that we're in an age of social media, which mediates hyper isolationist individuality. So I think it's we're trying to take the universality of the digital of our moment, and we're trying to create real sociality out of it where there is actual mutual intelligibility. And I know that's something that you've complained about, Dave, before with the Deleuzians, that they have this notion of singularity where there's this seems to be a total foreclosure of intelligibility, where there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of theory, but there's not a lot of intelligibility. Their shared intelligibility on the level of universality. And so, maybe that's another part of this tour that we could maybe point towards, is that this is a space where we're actually trying to bring the digital stuff that we're doing into physical space and create shared spaces of conversations or contradictions where we can get to know each other better and know each other better. So I'm not sure, and I know that we've got to, yeah, we've got to close up the conversation, but maybe just sort of as a final thought to like sort of tease people towards the European tour, and also I'll create the images when I release the video to show the tour poster so that everyone can see the dates and stuff like that. But yeah, maybe just pointing towards, yeah, where can people get in touch with you guys, and what are you hoping to, and what can people expect from all the various events? Maybe just give an overview.
Yeah, I realized a little bit ago. Oh yeah. I started out saying like people are wondering like where to go and how to get there. And then it was like, but people are also wondering why to go. And then I went into this whole thing and then half hour later. Yeah, no. So if you're just already sold on it and you just want to go, well, the easy way is theoryunderground.com/EU hyphen tour hyphen 2024. That's the easy way. And what you'll get when you go there is the tour poster, some copy about the tour, and at the bottom, you'll actually see links to click on to get to the websites of the individual venues. So some of the venues have their own websites and tickets that you can, and the ticketed events are all very, very low cost, actually. I mean, in some cases, I think we should probably put $100 to $200 price tag on something. And maybe in the future we will, because I want people to show up and take it really serious at least once on tour, at least twice on tour. And I also want, as Nina said recently, like, sorry, we want to normalize people paying for the arts. Like, yeah, there's nothing more neoliberal than people thinking they should get the arts for free. There's nothing more neoliberal than that. And then people are like, oh, capitalism's so bad, it exploits workers. But artists, they should give it away for free. And it's just like, oh yeah. And then the very same people who will be like, oh yeah, well, I could never like pay for someone's Patreon $3 a month. They'll be like, What, you didn't tip over 25% on on that? You know what I mean? Like they think that you should tip like so super big when you're sitting at a restaurant, but then they don't treat the arts that way. And I'm not saying you shouldn't tip. I'm saying treat the arts that way. Like people think that they should all come at us for free because the CIA's little propaganda machine that we all organize on called and are addicted to called the internet. Like, you know, it has been kind of established on this giving it all away for free until we're so addicted that then it'll start raising the subscription fees on us. And then, oh, now everything costs a lot and we live in neo-feudalism. That is the trajectory we are on. And if we don't get with it, if we don't get with it and figure it out soon enough, then we're just going to get phased out and become irrelevant. And when by we, what I mean is not obviously underground theory, teaching institutions, because we're so new that this is like this we is only just in formation. I'm talking about just like we as in professors, we as in liberal arts enthusiasts, we as in teachers everywhere. Like teachers are being phased out. Teachers are being phased out of the university. They are being replaced by adjuncts. Full-time professors are being replaced by adjuncts, and professors are being replaced by administrators. And teachers are being replaced by babysitters and HR woke schools. Like the situation is dire, and we have to marshal the troops and really actually do something. And part of that means being realists about capital, not capitalist realists. Right? Realists about capital means if we're entering a stage of neo-feudalism and platform capitalism is the model, we actually have to adapt to it. That doesn't mean that that should be our end goal. But it does mean that if that's the business model, the only viable business model for making a living right now, that we do have to adapt to it because we do have to make a living right now. Because that's the thing about the arts. It actually comes from a life lived, breathing the arts in question. You have to be immersed in it if it is to be worth anything. And to be immersed in it, you can't be working like at Amazon or at a heavily administrated university where you're super busy teaching the exact same freaking course over and over and over and over and over again to giant classes of people who are only there because of credit, not any kind of real higher in itself goal, right? So
So
look
with
at
that being
the
said,
look at the tour poster, people. Look at yeah.
so
With that being said, look at
I want to
I'll
emphasize
just run it. I'll run over
just
it really quick. Paris,
sure.
Brussels, Berlin, Vienna, Linz, Krakow, Glasgow, London, Oxford. Paris and Brussels are sold out already. Berlin probably has 20 spots available, but those are actually filling up. You'll just have to send an email if you want to be there on May 10th. Vienna on May 14th, you'll have to send an email. So some of these are ticketed, some of these are just like you email the organizer. Linz is currently showing May 15th, but it might be May 13th. That's probably going to be what it is. I think we're moving it. Krakow on May 18th, it's going to be another one where you do it by email. Glasgow on May 22nd is ticketed. London on the 24th is ticketed. And the event at Oxford University on May 25th with Carl's amazing Museum of Consciousness collaboration. That event is going to be ticketed as well. Those tickets should be available hopefully by the time you've posted this video. Thank you.
Links will
Sorry.
be
Yeah.
links will be available in the description. I'll also have animations. They'll be on the screen when this is being displayed. I just want to give maybe the final word to Nance and Ann. What are you most looking forward to on the tour, and maybe the event that you're anticipating the most?
To be honest, the event that I'm anticipating the most because I have the most anxiety about it is the event at Oxford.
Okay. So you have that's at the end, so you have a lot of time to deal with your anxiety, and then it'll just
yeah.
become more terrifying the closer you get.
Yeah, but it's that's only going to make it all better, man. I'm so grateful to be a part of this.
Fantastic. And Anne?
Oh gosh. I think I am looking forward to the panel with Nina and Helen, just having some girl power, some female representation.
Yeah, I love that.
But I'm just like excited for the whole thing. And actually, my brother will be joining Dave and Nance like a couple days before me as the official documentarian and filmographer of this tour, and he's gonna be taking over the project of kind of making the documentaries. He's really into film. He's about to graduate from the School of Journalism in Nevada here in the US. And so I'm like a proud older sister too. This will be his first time out of the country. And so that I'm also just looking forward to and kind of theory pilling him a little bit more than he already has been. So
All right. So
yeah.
we've got a bunch of Americans in Europe. I hope for those of you watching, I hope you can make an event or two. This has been David McKerracher, Nance, and Anne Snellgrove McKerracher. And for everyone watching, thanks for tuning in and have a great evening. Hope to see you
Thank
on
you,
tour.
Cadell.
Theory Underground is coming to Europe for an American Idiots EU book tour. To learn more, visit theoryunderground.com/EU Tour 2024. Throughout the tour, there will be stops in Paris on April 27th, Brussels on April 30th and May 2nd, Berlin on May 10th, Vienna on May 14th, Linz on May 15th, Krakow on May 18th, Glasgow on May 22nd, London on May 24th, and finally, Oxford on May 25th. To learn more, visit theoryunderground.com/EU-tour-2024. The next Philosophy Portal course focuses on Hegel's philosophy of right, a text which represents Hegel's most mature political notion of rights. The course starts May 18th, 2024. To find out more, visit philosophyportal.online. Hegel's philosophy of right approaches a science exploring the political tension between will and world, as well as their collision into family, community, state, and world spirit. The course runs through May and June, with the first class starting May 18th. There will be 5 lectures and discussions hosted by myself, Cadell Last, as well as 2 exegetical reading spaces with philosopher Dimitri Croimans. You will get access to these courses for a lifetime, as well as an invitation to participate in a student-led conference and the opportunity to submit your own publication for a student-led anthology process. To learn the foundation of Hegel's mature political notion this May and June, sign up now at philosophyportal.online, and I hope to see you on the other side. Philosophy Portal also focuses on publishing community works. We have so far published Enter the Alien, inspired by Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, and Abyssal Arrows, inspired by Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. To find out more, visit philosophyportal.online. You can also find my solo books, Global Brain Singularity, focused on the relation between humans and technological singularity, Systems and Subjects, focused on the relation between general system science and continental philosophy, and Sex, Masculinity, and God, a trialogue about sexual energy and theology. You can find all of these works at philosophyportal.online.